More proof this week that global warming politicians would rather frighten you with falsehoods than calm you with the truth. Politicians like Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. You may remember Albanese back in March beating up climate hysteria about severe tropical storm Trevor, which was actually too weak when it hit land to be called a cyclone.
The science tells us that there would be more extreme weather events, they would be more frequent and they'd be more intense. I think anyone who looks at the science knows that that is what is occurring. So you can't say this event is just because of climate change. What you can say is that climate change is having an impact on our weather patterns.
You heard there one of the most repeated fake scares of global warming alarmists, that global warming is giving us more cyclones or worse ones. But even then, and that's before this new research I'll tell you about in a sec, those claims were plainly nonsense. As I pointed out for years now, our Bureau of Meteorology has long shown that we've been getting fewer cyclones and fewer severe ones over the past, 55 years now. And the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, it admitted in 2021 that Australia had a decreasing trend in eastern Australia since the 1800s of tropical cyclones reaching land. So the science had spoken. But look what happened when Scania's presenter Laura Jays read out that IPCC statement to federal Teals MP Zoe Steggall back in March, when she too was trying to claim that events like Trevor would happen more often, etc., etc. Trevor was then flooding Lismore. This is just as the start of what's going to come.
Sadly, we know these events are going to happen more frequently, at a greater scale, bigger impact each time, and that risk is escalating.
And it says landfall frequency over Australia shows a decreasing trend in eastern Australia since the 1800s, as well as in other parts of Australia since 1882. A paleoclimate proxy reconstruction shows that the recent levels of tropical cyclone interactions along the Australian coastline are the lowest in the past 550 to 1500 years. So what is the climate impact of this cyclone?
It's great if cyclones are less frequent. Unfortunately, go and say that to the Lismore community.
Oh, no.
Honestly, ask the people in Lismore, they trump the science. People are traumatised in standing in a flood. You've got to listen to that for a picture of global warming around the world. I mean, seriously. But now, updated research by Roger Pielke Jr., who's one of the world's top authorities on hurricane damage and cyclone damage. This research underlines how wrong alarmists like Albanese and Steggall are. Dr. Pielke is a Professor Emeritus of Environmental Studies at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and he runs an influential Substack site devoted to climate change information. He joined me earlier from his hotel room on the road. Professor Pielke, thank you so much for joining us. You have now updated your research on the accumulated energy of cyclones. And as I read it, it again shows that claims that we are getting more cyclones or more intense ones are false. Now, can you take us through what your findings are, starting with this graphic of yours that I'm showing of total accumulated cyclone energy around the world for the past 54 years? What does it tell us?
So accumulated cyclone energy is a combination of the frequency, so the number of storms, and their intensity. It's a combined metric. And so what this graph shows, it's data from the U.S. NOAA agency that's processed by Colorado State University. It shows that there's been no upward trend over the last 40 plus years in that particular metric, consistent with what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has concluded about tropical cyclones.
Now, then you get people saying, all right, we might not get more, but they will be worse. Then there's this graphic, though, of yours showing accumulated energy per cyclone around the world. What does that one tell you?
So there's a hypothesis out there, and it's important to recognize it's a legitimate hypothesis, that we will see overall less storms, but the ones we do have will be more intense. So if you combine those two projections together, that would imply that we have more ACE, more accumulated cyclone energy per storm. And so when we look historically, that trend certainly does not appear in the data globally to date. It may emerge yet sometime in the future, but anyone claiming that we've seen an increase in the intensity of storms based on that hypothesis is not yet correct.
See, this is what is confusing me. I think the data is unambiguous. I've suggested other data earlier in the show. Why do you think politicians and activists keep saying the opposite, that we are getting more cyclones, or at least getting more intense ones, causing more damage?
Yeah, anyone making the claim that we've seen cyclones or more intense cyclones, it's contradictory the consensus scientific assessments of the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and also the readily available data. In actual fact, hurricanes, tropical cyclones globally are not the best place to look for signatures of human-caused climate change, simply because there's so few of them, and especially so few intense hurricanes in any given year. So even if there are very small signals in the data, it would take many decades and perhaps longer for those signals to be detectable in the data sets.
Yeah, but it's weird to me. Like, this whole cyclones theory really kicked off, and particularly, as you know, with Al Gore and his Inconvenient Truth, had a big hurricane motif on the poster for Inconvenient Truth, Hurricane Katrina, and it's been perpetuated ever since that we will get more and worse ones when the data actually shows we don't. In fact, the opposite for Australia. Why the persistence of this belief, though?
Yeah, there's a delightful irony in that movie poster from Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. Hurricane Katrina coming out of the smokestack is spinning the wrong way, as if it were a southern hemisphere hurricane. And I think, to me, that's a bit of a metaphor for the fact that hurricanes are very photogenic. They cause tremendous destruction. They can be very tragic also, as we've seen tropical systems in Sri Lanka just this week. And it makes them readily available for being exploited in advocacy campaigns. Climate change is real and it's important, but it doesn't deserve exaggerating the consequences for extreme weather or their impacts. And it just so happens that hurricanes have become a favored topic for promotion of climate change.
Now, I just want to emphasise the point you just made, that you say climate change is real, and I want to assure viewers that are not as sceptical as I, that I am not talking to a red in tooth and claw denialist, that you have been consistent on that point. But my question to you is this: if climate change for us means fewer cyclones and fewer intense ones, which it does seem to be in Australia, isn't climate change good?
Yeah, the main issue with human-caused climate change is not certainties about how the future will evolve. It's the uncertainties and areas of ignorance. And all else equal, we would certainly prefer not to be provoking the global energy balance through the emission of greenhouse gases. That gets us to the starting line when talking about policy. Energy policy has many dimensions. Reducing emissions is but one of them. So too are energy costs, energy access, energy availability, and reliability. And in many places around the world, people just simply don't enjoy the benefits of energy as you and I do. So climate change and extreme events are a consideration, but they are certainly not the issue on the positive side of the ledger or the negative side. And for too long, advocates have exploited extreme weather in ways that go well beyond what science can support, which undermines the entire effort to respond to climate change.
Professor Roger Pielke, thank you so much indeed for your time. Always enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.